Ray, welcome to the Vermillion Unplugged. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing really, really good. So the whole week has been great, except today, like in the morning, like it rained. There was like a storm. And funny thing before we get into it, so like in the morning, usually I go to the gym, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go run. And I was gonna run with some friends like around 6, but then it was raining. And I was like, well, I guess they probably canceled, but I'll wait. And then I hear the rain, just like, pow, pow, and the thunder. I'm like, man, this is not going good. I should have just went to the gym with my wife, but she took the truck. And I was like, well, let me just wait. So it was like 6:25, almost 6:30. I'm like, yeah, it looks fine. So I go out there. I'm about to head, and I just see lightning. And I'm like, nope, let me go back inside. And then I wait. I'm like, okay, now I think it's fine. So I go, and I take a little run, and I see a bunch of lightning. I'm like, oh, well, let me just keep going. It's because I got two phobias. So it's lightning, and the other one is I don't know what you call it, but like being stranded in the middle of the ocean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't like super deep water and there's nothing. I don't know. I'm afraid something's gonna get me. But that was my
Well,
week.
you know what's really funny was that because I was awake at I think I woke up at like around 5:30 ish, and so I woke up because of the lightning, and by that time like I was just awake. So I looked at my weather app at around 6:30, somewhere around there, and just to see like how long the rain was going to go.
Mhm.
And so I'm like looking at the app and I'm just kind of scrolling down and I see running conditions. And it said like at this time it was full green, like these are great running conditions. I'm like, who wants to run in the rain? So yeah.
That's it's cool. It's cool. All right, so let's get back to it. So what do you do?
So I am the chair for the theater department. I'm also an associate professor for the department. I teach classes like play analysis, theater history, theory and criticism, and as well as our first year experience class. And then I teach offshoots like next year or next semester, I'm going to be teaching or co-teaching stage management. And then I will also be teaching a theater management class. So one is stage management is like running the show, or stage management too, I should say, is, stage managers who are helping run the show when in both rehearsal and then in production. Theater management is more of kind of like the business side of like how to run a theater, which is really funny because my dad owned a business, and he kept on telling me, you need to own a business. Like he even said, don't go to college, just own a business. And I was like, I never want to own a business. I want nothing to do with running a business. And now, even though I am a professor, we're like one of the few units on campus that actually is running a business.
Oh, really?
Because we put on productions. We have a product that we produce.
Mhm.
We have audiences, so we have a consumer who's buying it. We have ticket sales. We have marketing. We have managing resources, the whole 9 yards. So I'm like sitting going, all right, so the very thing I didn't want to do, I'm actually doing, but I'm doing it for the art that I love. So I'm okay with that.
So how did you get into theater?
Honestly, it was because of a girl. When I so in high school, in junior high school and high school, I did a little bit of theater, but it was never like a passion of mine. And then, just kind of really cut to the chase. I had a job at a part-time job at a clothing store, and I was going to a community college in San Diego, and there was a coworker of mine who she was and still is like just absolutely drop dead gorgeous, and she was a theater major, and I said, in trying to create a bond between us, I said, oh, I did theater in high school and junior high school, and she's like, oh, well, you should come join our program. And I'm like, yeah, I will. I never got the girl, but I did fall in love with theater, and it was something about creating stories and making connections with audiences. That aspect of storytelling has been around since before recorded, or since before the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, kind of the earliest scripts that we are familiar with is I think it's the Abydos Passion Play from ancient Egypt that predates the Greeks. So, storytelling is part of our DNA. To the best of our knowledge, we're the only creatures on the planet that tell stories. And so it's kind of like a fundamentally core aspect of who we are. And in those stories, we talk about who we are and who we wish we could be. So to me, that seems really magical.
Is there a big difference between like theater, like live, like being on stage versus actors in a movie?
Oh yeah. So, like some of the core principles are the same. And about finding characters, about kind of understanding what is my character doing, what are the given circumstances, both in a stage play as well as in a movie. But in a movie, and I'm not saying that one is better than the other, I'm going to be clear about that. But in a movie, usually there are a number of takes. We'll do a scene, and the camera will be on me if I'm the actor, and I will, deliver. We'll do the scene a couple of times. And we'll also do it from a couple of different angles. So there's a lot of repetition in it. And then what happens is that actors don't necessarily know which take is going to be used. The director may say that's the take, but then it may not be, because that's all decided in the editing room. So yes, as an actor, I created I did those moments, but I don't know what that performance really is. I know what the sense of the scene is, but I don't know what the performance really is until after it's edited together, and then I see it. When we do it live, there's no cuts, there's no do-overs. They just is what it is. So it's happening in real time, and there's even though like when you're doing a movie. You're surrounded by people, but the whole point is to pretend that they're not there. And when we do live theater, also they're not there. Like most of the time we pretend that they're not there, depending on what kind of play we're doing. But we do feel the audience, and when they clap, and when they gasp, or when they're when they are demonstrating some sort of a response to what has happened in the moment. We're human. We just respond off of that. So when we have a really good live audience, that really does elevate the performance. And so, because it's about feeding energy. And with the film, there is that medium there, and it is doing something slightly different, which has its own advantages. So they are different in that respect.
At USD, so I know there's a theater program. Do they also have a film thing?
We have a film minor. We don't have a school of film. What we do, like our film minor, is made up of classes between theater and mass communication, and so and they have. The classes that they teach are kind of video editing, as well as, directing for the camera. And so they have that, but that's more, for them, it's more, or it used to be kind of more like TV news type stuff, because it was part of the media program. So it kind of piecemeals it together. But we've had a couple of students who are not theater majors, but they're film minors, or some of them were actually theater majors, but they're doing, they're entering in film festivals and they're winning. We've had students who have gained some really nice recognition through film festivals. We've had students who are actually working in the film industry. We've had some graduates who are, that they are working as working on the costuming side of things, on the technical side of things, both in television and in film. And actually, we have a student who's going to be graduated a few years back, but she's in the Sioux City International Film Festival. Like one of her movies is in that. So she's actually going to be visiting us because she's going to the film festival, and she's going to be visiting USD, so which is going to be great to see her. So
okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, what goes into a film production? I think, if I remember right, I've been to, in my whole life, I think I've been to two. There was one in high school that we went. I forgot what it was, but there was one when I was a kid. We went to a place called, it was in Texas. It was, I don't know if it's called Casa Mañana or Casa Manzana, one of those. But we saw the production of the Nutcracker. I think it was the Nutcracker.
So I'm sorry, you said film. Do you mean theater though?
Theater.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, theater,
yeah,
theater.
yeah. No, that's totally fine.
Yeah, it was the first time I see like live, like a live performance, and I was like, oh, this is different. I thought it was gonna, because I like watching movies, so I never go to a theater except that one time when I was a kid and that time in high school. And I remember in high school they were promoting it, and I was like, I don't want to go to it, but they said no, it's actually really good, and we went to it, and it was amazing. I remember like right after we had that, or the students, actors, I guess, they line up and, people are leaving, shaking hands. And I'll shake his hand. Hey, you did a really good job. But what goes into a production? People that don't know.
Oh God. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears. No. So that's actually a really good question, because most people, like, they kind of see the finished product, and that, when you go see a show, there is audiences don't. I don't think most audiences spend a lot of time thinking about the labor that went into it, and that, for us, we, okay, just from the very beginning, first we select a season, and we usually do that a year in advance. And so, because we have to go through, again, business stuff. So I have to go through contracts and, licenses for the shows and whatnot. And then, when we select our season, we're also selecting, okay, who our directors are going to be and who the designers are going to be. And then we start having production meetings. My production manager is going to kill me. Sorry, Scott. That we have them, I think, like 8 weeks out. So, like, we have them a few months before the show opens. And so there we have, the director presents their vision, like, why this show, how are they seeing the show? And then from there, there's a collaboration with the designers to talk about kind of how to create this world, how to manifest this world in a material way. And so we have costume design, we have scenic design, we have lighting design. If the show calls for it, we have projection design, we have sound design. So we have all of these design elements that come into it. While that's going on, we then cast the show. And so, so there's a whole audition process that happens, through, preliminary auditions, then callbacks. Then we go into our rehearsal process, which can be 5 to 6 weeks of rehearsing the show. And meanwhile, we're still having production meetings, kind of fine tuning kind of the world that we're trying to create. Meanwhile, once that starts happening, and we have our deadlines for scenic and costume and whatnot, then we have, they're building the set, they're building the costumes, because at USD, most everything we do is built. It's not that we don't purchase, we don't purchase a set, we design and we build it. Because we are a BFA and MFA professional training program. So we are trying to the best that we can, given our budgets and our resources, to create a professional, this is what it's going to be like if you work for a regional theater or what have you. And so we're building the sets, we're building the costumes, we're hanging the lights, we're setting everything up. We are rehearsing, and during that rehearsing time, actors are learning their lines. The director is working with the actors to develop their characters, and again, a collaborative process between the director and the actors about, okay, what story are we telling? Making sure that we're all on the same page, so it's a cohesive story. And then, so the tech side and the acting side are kind of on these two paths that are running kind of parallel towards each other, but then we meet for tech week. And in tech, we take all of the blocking and the storytelling on the performance side, and then we take all of the technical aspect and storytelling on the design side, and we meet them together. And then we have about a week's worth of uh, of tech rehearsals. So that way the stage manager, who again the director, once the show opens, director is no longer involved, and it's the stage manager who's literally running the show. And so, so the stage manager is learning how to coordinate all of the various bodies, and it's not just the actors, but it's also all of the crew that is running the light board and sound system, as well as the running crew, the fly crew, the costume crew, making sure all of those people are kind of, we're all working towards a goal. And then opening night happens, and if we did our job well, it looks like it just is.
Okay.
You don't see, and we don't kind of recognize the labor that goes into it. So yeah, it's an amazing process, and it's also again. So one of the other things about like this isn't like an acting thing necessarily, like performing for in a film versus performing for the stage, but like when you do film, it's there. There's a recorded thing there. When you do theater, once the show closes, then you never see it again. And even then, every time you see a performance, it's never the same performance twice because we're human. And so it's, there are going to be slight, changes that happen. And for me, kind of going back to that kind of metaphysical aspect of theater, I do consider it to be like a magical thing, because magic is like making something vanish before your eyes. And in theater, we're literally making things appear and disappear in the moment. And once the stage is clear and we get ready for the next show, the only thing that like lives on is our memory of the show, and then whatever pictures we took of the production. But that's kind of like to me, that's like a very beautiful thing. It's a very ephemeral and a very, it's like life, you can't go back and redo a moment. It just is.
Okay. Is there times where things have gone wrong?
Oh God, yes. Oh my God, all the time. I should say all the time. There was a, so I'm a director as well. And and I know that, there is always the potential of something going wrong during a show. That's part of the beauty of theater. And kind of like, how do we recover from that? And I remember it was right after COVID, and we had, we had the Knudsen Theater at USD underwent a really big renovation, but it was happening during COVID. And so there were some kinks that we were trying to work out, and also some other issues that and on a technical side of things, meaning like equipment. And so during a show that I directed, I was sitting in the house, or sitting in the audience, and there's supposed to be a light transition. So sometimes we use lights to create spaces. And so there's like, okay, so then there's supposed to be a transition so that we go into another space. And our light board froze. And so there were no light changes, meaning that actors are now supposed to do a scene in the dark, or like it not completely in the dark, but it was like very dimly lit. And so I'm like, oh man, I wonder what they're going to do. So I'm like sitting there going, I'm just going to see what happens. And our light board operator, who was up in our light booth, which is on like, it's elevated, it's like on the second floor, the second floor of the theater, and they could see the stage. Well, the light board operator just calmly walked down, and she walked through the audience to get to our secondary light board that was in the back of the house. And so she took the SD card that had all of the cues in it, put it in, rebooted the system, and the show went on. And it was just one of those things where it's like, I'm sure audiences saw that there was an issue, but it was one of those things where it's like, you know, we don't panic about these things because, again, we kind of know it's supposed to happen, or we not that it's supposed to happen, that it could happen.
Mm.
And so it's one of those things where it's just like, all right, well, let's just fix the problem, and let's not make the problem worse. And but yeah, it is part of theater. I mean, again, it's part of, like, again, if we make a mistake in film, all right, we just don't use that take. If something happens in theater, well, let's just move with it. There's actually a play that I directed at the Black Hills Playhouse called The Play That Goes Wrong. And in it, there's a play within a play.
Mm-hmm.
And in the play within the play, a whole bunch of things are going wrong, including the set falling apart, an actor getting knocked out and then being replaced by, like, a stage manager. And what was so funny about that is that the play, our production could not go wrong in order for all the things that are, quote unquote, going wrong work. And so it was terrifying. I think that was the most terrified I was about a play going wrong that when it wasn't supposed to.
Really?
Yeah. Just because, I mean, we had, like, and again, it was totally safe. I don't want to make it sound like it wasn't. But, like, there's a moment in the play where, in the play within the play, the second floor collapses. And it's like, while people are on top of it. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I really don't want that thing to fall, like, in real life. So it was always that kind of like, well, okay, let's see what it looks like. That kind of nervousness. But luckily, nothing went wrong in the BHP production, the Black Hills Playhouse production of The Play That Goes Wrong, except for all the things that were supposed to go wrong.
Okay.
So it went really well.
What about times when actors, like, have they ever, like, froze up or forget lines?
Oh yeah. We had a few years back when I was living in San Diego, I was the assistant director for a production of The Weir at the Old Globe, and this was during previews. And I think it was our second to last preview before we officially opened. And one of the actors, The Weir is a 4-person play, and there is one particular character that kind of drives so much of the play. It's a play where these people come to a bar and they're just telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have people just telling really long monologues. And this one night, one of the actors just completely froze. He did not realize, like, he didn't know that it was his line, and he was not sure what was, like, he thought someone else was supposed to, it was like someone else's line. So he didn't say anything, and the other actors are kind of looking at him. And then there was another actor who was trying to feed him lines. But the actor was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, he didn't say that, but that was, like, kind of the look and whatnot. And then this went on for, it felt like years. I think it was probably about, like, 30 seconds or so. And then something clicked, and then everybody got back on the same page, and everything just moved forward. So, I mean, that does happen. I mean, it is, I mean, we're human. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, and when that happens, that's another thing where I'm like going, how are they going to fix this? Because, and again, it's that until everything comes back, or let me rephrase that, until everything kind of gets back on track, that time where the play is going wrong is like, oh my God, like, how all I'm thinking of in the audience is, how are they going to kind of correct this? And also, in a weird way, kind of enjoying it, because that is, like, if we've done our work well, we know how to recover. And even though, yeah, an actor lost their lines, the other actors were able to recover it. And the show just continued on. So, yeah, it is. I don't want to say that I enjoy it, because it makes it sound like, I'm enjoying other people's suffering that's going on in stage, and that's not the case. But that is part of the joy of theater. It's part of that magic where anything can happen.
Now, has there been times when, like, you have you have a play that's been like super amazing and some that are just like, hey, it's not even going good. The audience don't like it, or it's never that extreme.
So, well, no, I mean, yeah, we've had, I've experienced, in my past, I've experienced like a run of a show where we had, um, you know, we had, we just had a bad show. And, you know, sometimes that can, audiences, again, we really do feed off of what the audience is giving us. So sometimes audiences just aren't like, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not like paying attention, but they're not giving off the same kind of energy. Especially like, you kind of notice it like a Friday night audience can be kind of a quiet audience because it's the very end of a work week and they're just tired. So like, it doesn't mean that they're not enjoying the show. It's just like, they're not like, you know, as like vocal, like, or aghast or something like that. But then there's also been times where we have, people are just off, an actor is just off, have you ever had a day where you are like, you just can't seem to do anything right?
Yep.
Yep.
Just like that. Okay.
Actors run into that as well. I mean, part of our training and part of like the rehearsal process is so that it gets so much in our body that we're not thinking about our next line. It just is there. And, so that we kind of like, I don't want to say they would go in autopilot, but that it's kind of an embodied aspect of us, kind of like athletes, where it's like they're not thinking about like a football player is not thinking about running a particular route while they're doing it. They just do it. That's part of their training. But sometimes, something gets in their head and they don't run the route that they're supposed to. The play doesn't work out. Sometimes an actor, something happens and they're like, where am I?
Yeah.
And so you do have like, you could have a bad performance, and I mean, I've seen bad performances from a run, and I've also seen great performances from that same run. So it just happens. One of the things that, I think our goal obviously is to have the best performance. And depending on, the not just the actors, but also the technicians, the people that are like behind the scenes stuff during a show, the better trained that they are, the more that a bad show is not a horrible show. It's just not as good as the best show that we did, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Okay. No, I understand. Even now, I understand more about that behind the scenes. So at the church that we go to, now I volunteer for the sound.
Oh yeah.
And now I know how important, like, if there's a sound, and then they got like slideshows, and then they got the stuff for like the live stream, and all this stuff goes on, and then they prep, and I'm like, oh snap! And in my head, I'm like, well, no one knows. Basically, no one. I don't think anyone's paying attention to us in the back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but all this stuff could happen, or this could be off, for example, for the sound, slide's not working. But like, I was just remembering what you said. Like, people just remember the finished product.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that's the joy of theater. But yeah, it's like there are so many unseen people that are making it all happen. And so like with your church, is the choir like, are they mic'd in any way, or is it just all?
Yeah, the band has their mics.
All right, so now you have to mix all that too. Yep. And it's just like, and so like, again, if like we're doing a musical, it's like we're mixing the band and we're mixing the vocals as we're sound engineering on the fly. I should say on the fly. We've rehearsed this, but we are sound engineering during the show. And again, so like in a like if you're cutting a record or if you're recording a song, again, there are different takes, and it's like, well, okay, the sound wasn't quite, the levels weren't quite as good as we wanted it to be, so let's do it again. Let's do another take. Again, in theater, it's like, I got to make those sound levels right, and I got to hear it, So yeah, lot of work.
It
It is
is.
a lot of work.
And also, how do the auditions? How do they work? How do you guys pick like the perfect person for those specific roles?
It's really kind of, well, it depends. So if we're doing like a non-musical,
Mm.
we're thinking about, okay, what are the needs of the characters? Like, what is the script calling for in terms of these characters? That's like an element. Then we're also thinking about, you know, uh, in my mind, what kind of energy is do these particular characters have, and so them trying to have an actor kind of like matches the spirit of those characters. Um, not necessarily like physically, but just like kind of like how are they in terms of their vibe? How does that work? And then also something that I think about is like, okay, how are all these people going to work together? Because we are like at USD, we usually have rehearsals from 6:30 to like 10:30 every evening, 5 days a week. So that's like 20 hours a week. Well, that we are going to be in the same room. So there's like kind of matching that.
Mm.
And then if it's a musical, all of those are still in play. Now we have, the like the music director involved or the choreographer involved to make sure, can they move for the dance requirements of the show, or do they have the right vocals to hit the various notes that these characters need to hit. And so then it turns into kind of a collaborative process, between, in musicals, it's a little bit more of a collaborative process just because there's more moving parts to it. But, so just kind of like working it together. But then also at USD, when we're, there, I'm, again, as both the director and as the chair, like thinking about, all right, what are the other show needs? Because again, if like I cast this person, then maybe they can't be involved in that show. And, kind of keeping that in mind, whereas like, what are the needs of the student actors, but then also what are the needs of the shows, and trying to find that balance between the two. So, there's a lot of, like kind of logistical thinking that goes into it, as well as trying to create an ensemble that will really mesh well together.
And what makes a good like a good actor versus like a bad actor?
I would say a good actor is someone who is not afraid to look stupid. So it is someone who isn't as self-conscious. Yes, there's technique and craft, and that's very important. Like, the technical aspects of acting. So being able to enunciate properly, excuse me. It's funny that I said enunciate and then swallowed so I couldn't even say enunciate. So the ability to be heard, to project, there are technical aspects to it, how one carries oneself, all of that kind of, again, learning the instrument, which is your entire body. But at its core, the actor who basically, again, is not concerned about how good they look, and that they have no fear of looking stupid. To me, that's like, because again, with that, they take really bold choices. They make really bold choices. They think outside of the box, and I'm not even talking about like in terms of like comedy, but just even in a more serious plays where they will go into spaces that others won't, because again, one of the biggest challenges that a lot of young actors have is actually being vulnerable on stage. And many of us are very guarded, and rightly so. And so that we don't want to share that part of us. And so, because again, sometimes it's like, oh, we will be seen as weak, or we will be seen as silly, or, there's a fear that we may be seen in a negative light, or we are dealing with things that are kind of really personal, we don't want to share that part of ourselves. And that last part, we don't, it's like a personal thing. We don't want to share that should absolutely be respected. Um, and, and actors who have that find ways of managing all of that, so that they can be fully expressive, and not really care about how do I look. Because again, once you have that, it just opens a whole world of possibilities.
Okay. And then is that when people say they're like very like in character? Am I getting that right?
So yeah, no, in character. So there's I'm not sure if this is what you're referring to. So I don't, correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth. But there is there's kind of like this mystique or kind of veneer around acting where it's like that person's in character. So it's just like, like using like movie examples, like someone like, I'm showing my age here, but like Heath Ledger as the Joker in Batman, kind of like being in character like that. And part of it is using your imagination to kind of embody that character. But it's I would say it's really about using one's imagination to kind of really imagine what is going on, and then exploring the character that way, as opposed to kind of the popular idea of what's called, and again, this isn't even like an accurate description, and that's a whole other podcast. Oops, I just hit the mic.
You're good.
It's a whole other podcast, but there's a thing called like method acting, and so we're being all methody about the whole thing, where it's like, I'm going to be in character, and you cannot call me by my real name. You must call me by the character name, and some of that is just like, sometimes I think that's just especially for Hollywood actors, where it's like, it's permission for you to be a jerk. As I'm blanking on his name. What was his name? The guy who was in who actually played Batman, the newest Batman, who was also in the vampire movies.
His name is, I know who you're talking about.
Anyway,
it's him.
Yeah. So he said in an interview, I'm paraphrasing this, but he said, "Have you ever noticed that the only time anyone ever wants to be a method actor is if they're playing an asshole?" And again, it's like permission to be an idiot or to be a jerk. And so, but that imagination to kind of like really imagine kind of, like kind of who you are or who this character is. And something actually along those kind of methody aspects, something that, the industry is changing, especially after COVID. There has been a greater sense of focus and care towards mental health. And, for some of the more some of the shows that are like kind of really dealing with like heavy topics and heavy thoughts and, kind of the things that characters are going through, that, as part of the rehearsal process is that we give the actors time to step out of the role. So that way, back in the old day, it was like, okay, we're done with rehearsal, out you go. And like the actor could be bringing, could be in an emotional state, or carrying like a whole bunch of emotional weight of the character, and then they go off and do whatever they're doing. Some actors can easily let that go. Some actors can't. And so just making sure that we give them the space and the time to step out of the role, meaning that, okay, we're going to decompress, we're going to kind of get out of it, find time in this safe space of the theater to kind of reset who we are before we go out into the world. So that is part of like, being in character. And again, as we move forward, usually as we progress towards as we get closer and closer to opening night, that's when actors are not worrying about their blocking, not worrying about their lines, because they know they're blocking and they know their lines, but then really getting into the heart and mind of the character. And that can be, a challenge, in terms of stepping out of that character once you're in it.
It could be in theater or even film.
In film and television, yeah.
Okay.
When it comes to the performance, yeah.
Can you think of a film or a play where like that I'll give an example, like for a film, something that's very, those topics are very, very heavy for the audience or for the character, do you think? Or can you think of
Yeah, so trying to think. So like a really good example of it, and again, I think a good example of this, and I want to be really clear that I'm not trying to promote this, because there has been, for the longest time, it was like, this is what you need to do to be a great actor. And for a while, I actually thought that myself. And I moved away from that style of acting and found that I was far better as an actor, kind of in terms of my exploration and in terms of communicating a story, than kind of being all internal and whatnot. But the movie Apocalypse Now, not Charlie Sheen, Martin Sheen, his dad,
Oh, okay.
Was in it, and that whole film was just racked with problems. But that there was like a scene where in the movie, and this is towards the beginning of the movie, that the character that Martin Sheen is playing is drinking, and that he's basically going through this kind of psychotic breakdown. And that in the course of the film, Martin Sheen punches a mirror, and that wasn't scripted. And so when he punched it, the mirror shattered and it cut his hand. And so now he is bleeding all over the place while he's completely drunk. And then I think he suffered a heart attack.
Like a real one?
Yeah. And so that was the thing where, and because the production was in such a mess financially with the studios and whatnot, that they kept the whole thing hush hush. And again, like, it was that kind of thing where it's like, I need to do all of this in order to have an authentic performance. And kind of like a funny story. I'm sure I'm going to be butchering this too. There was a movie called The Marathon Man that starred Dustin Hoffman, who was one of these, kind of method actor types, who would really get into the character. And opposite of Laurence Olivier, who was, we kind of call it the English school, where it was more about like a technical approach. I don't think anyone would say that Laurence Olivier was a hack of an actor ever. And so like Dustin Hoffman, I've heard some conflicting stories about this, but the basic idea is that Dustin Hoffman's character is basically in the wrong place at the wrong time. He's being tortured, and he just escaped his torture, and that he like the scene that he's about to do prior to that in the story of the film is that he's been on the run all night. So Dustin Hoffman, in order to get ready for that scene, that he stayed awake all night long, and that he kept on running around the block before he wanted to shoot it, because he wanted to have that kind of physical sensation of being tired, of kind of like almost on the verge of a breakdown. Excuse me. And so there was a delay in shooting the scene, which when there's a delay in shooting the scene, it pushes everything back, which meant that so that like someone went up to Laurence Olivier and said, we're rescheduling the shooting of your scene because the scene is taking so long. And Laurence Olivier said, why? And he's like, well, Dustin Hoffman is not quite ready. So Laurence Olivier, so the story goes, grabbed Dustin Hoffman mid-run and said, Dustin, my boy, why don't you just try acting? And I think there's quite a bit to that. I think, again, like, you don't have to physically and mentally break yourself in order to tell stories. Yeah, I think the first time I heard that story, I was like, maybe I should re-examine how I go about acting. So, I mean, because the thing is that we are trying to create the truth of the moment. And creating the truth of the moment doesn't necessarily mean like you're literally in that moment. It's just trying to convey that truth to the audience. And there are a number of different ways of doing it. And so yeah, I feel like I've just gone on a tangent. And
No, it's cool.
oh no, but yeah, the apocalypse now.
Yeah.
Martin Sheen actually getting drunk, cutting his hand, having a heart attack, and then everybody like hiding that fact, and then Laurence Olivier getting really impatient when it doesn't happen.
I think I remember, you know that movie, I think it's called The Django?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a part with Leonardo DiCaprio where he like hits his hand,
Yeah.
but I don't know I think it was an accident, he's actually bleeding, but they kept rolling.
Yeah, and I think he actually, I feel like he broke his hand in that moment. Because again, like he got caught up in the moment, but he didn't want to, but he was in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of saying, oh my God, I broke my hand or I hurt my hand, that he didn't say anything and everyone thought it was fine and that they just kept on rolling. And then after Quentin Tarantino said, cut, it was like, I think I broke my hand.
Yeah, okay. But he didn't actually do it on purpose.
No. Again, he was like in the moment, and that he had an impulse. And one of the things that, one of the joys of being an actor is, allowing your impulses to be, but also one of the responsibilities of that is kind of also being able to, to be wary of and to, be responsible in those impulses. Because again, sometimes, like my least favorite actor of all time, and he's like Jared Leto.
Oh yeah,
and when he did the Joker, like he was sending like rats to people and
I remember
all sorts of crap, and I'm like all the things he was doing was like that has nothing to. I'm a comic book nerd at the same time, and like none of that has anything to do with the Joker. You're just being just an idiot. And so yeah, I mean, and again, it's one of those things where it's like, because again, things that he was doing, if this was like, if I tried to do this at a business, like at a corporation, HR would be on my ass so fast, and they should.
Yeah.
And so, you do want to make sure that you are being considerate of others, that you're taking other people into account, that you're respecting their approach, their methodologies, and also just not being a jerk.
So let's compare it. How would you compare Jack Nicholson's Joker, Heath Ledger, and Jared Leto's?
Well, so with Jack Nicholson, so it's really funny that you mentioned that, because Jack Nicholson actually did come from like the method school of acting, but for him, it was more about, again, kind of like letting things go and just kind of being in the moment as opposed to being self-conscious of it. And so when you see that portrayal of Joker, it's amazing, because it's like he is he is so present in every scene that he's in. When I mean present, I mean it's like that there's something going on behind those eyes, that he's in the moment, that he's giving you everything in those moments. Also, he got paid quite a bit of money for that. And Heath Ledger also, was the same way, that he was really into it, or he was really in the moment, not into it, but he was in the moment, and that you could see, that he had like complex ideas that were going on in his approach, that both his and, it's going to sound weird, if you look at Tim Burton's films, his films are not known for nuance, but like Jack Nicholson's approach to playing the Joker, it was filled with nuance. And there's like and kind of going back to Heath Ledger, there's a really kind of famous or semi-famous story where in Batman Returns, is that the one? The second film, the one that he was in, that he blows up a hospital. And so...
Oh, The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight, yeah, thank you.
Knight.
So that he blows up a hospital, and that Batman Returns, that's Tim Burton.
Yeah.
So that Heath Ledger is, that he is supposed to like blow up a building or blow up the hospital. And so he has a detonator in his hand. Obviously, his detonator is not the same detonator that's actually blowing up the building, because that's special effects is doing that. So he's walking out and he like hits the button and nothing happens. And so he's like, So it keeps hitting the button, because like he is in the moment. And then all of a sudden the explosion happens. There was some like minor technical issue that there was a delay in it. So because he never broke character and he became fixated on why isn't this working, that when the explosion did happen, it caught him off guard, because even though I want to cause an explosion, if you're human, I'm pressing this. Why is this not working? Because that's your focus. And then the explosion happened. And that was like a brilliant, like being in the moment. Jared Leto was just like, look how crazy I am. Look how cool I am. There was so much like, look at me, look how brilliant I am, as opposed to being in the moment.
Yeah. Because he also had like the tattoos. They said right here, it says, I'm crazy.
Yeah, crazy. And it's really funny because, usually when you see something like that, and Hollywood is a little different than like when we talk about like theater, because, sometimes, so usually like when a costume designer designs a costume, that they are thinking about the actor who's playing it, like in theater. But they're also like, this is the character. And the costume designer may talk to the actor about like kind of, how they're approaching the actor, they have that kind of space and time. And, but it's usually like the costume designer that's really kind of like driving. When you get to movies, particularly like big budget movies where you are dealing with stars and their egos, that I am curious to know. I would not be surprised, put it this way, if Jared Leto, or Leto, whatever is pronounced his last name, it's like, wouldn't it be cool if he'd said crazy? And it's like, yeah, I guess that's not really Joker, but sure, why not? And again, that didn't tested well, for market audiences, so they slowly digitally removed all of those tattoos, or tried to minimize those tattoos. So, and again, it's one of those things where it's like, whenever I see things like that, I see it more as the actor's ego wanting to be seen. Like me, the actor, look at me, as opposed to look at what this character is doing. So yeah, that's why I'm not a big fan of his.
So is there a comic book movie that you like? Or
there's a number of them.
Which ones capture like the characters
from the comic books? Wow, we're really getting off topic of theater. No, so for me, I think my favorite, I don't know if I have a favorite comic book movie. I do have a favorite comic book movie moment. And that was, and again, it was about kind of like presence and investment in characters. So again, one of the things about, we're not meant to look at Heath Ledger's Joker and sympathize with him. We're not meant to be on his side, but we have an attachment to him. Same thing with the Jack Nicholson one. I personally never had any attachment to Jared Leto. But in Endgame, nope, not Endgame. What was the name of
Infinity War? Is it Avenger one?
Yeah, it was the Avenger one, but it was the part 2 to Endgame. Why am I?
Yeah, it's called Endgame.
Is that Endgame?
Yep, it's Infinity War and then Endgame.
Okay, right. So in Endgame, it's so you have kind of the trinity of the Marvel universe. You have Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor, and they all go up against Thanos, and everybody is beaten to the ground, and so Captain America, he's badly injured. He's got this big gash in his arm, and he like uses the shield to kind of close the wound, and that he's like looking at Thanos, and it's like, I'm dead. I am so dead right now, but I'm not going to give up. I am not going to give up. And then you hear this kind of scritch sound.
Oh yeah.
And then you hear on your left. And then the portals open, and out comes, I'm getting all like verklempt about this whole thing right now. The Falcon comes in, and then we have T'Challa and Shuri, and forgetting the other character's name, but the like
Wong, all of them.
Yeah, the Wakanda people coming out, and then you have everybody start coming out, and it was like that was 10, 11 long years of investment in all of these characters, building up to this one moment. And I do think that Chris Evans as an actor is really under what's the word I'm looking? He's not given enough credit.
Mm-hmm. Underappreciated.
Underappreciated. I think it's because he's so freaking good looking, but he is like an amazing actor, and in that moment where it's like, you know, I'm dead, but I'm not going down, and that kind of all hope is lost, but I'm going to go one more go out with Thanos, and then everybody coming back, you know, post snap, and like, to me, it was like, that was a payoff that I don't think I've ever seen in any other movie. Now, are there other movies better than that? By God, yes. Mm-hmm. But in terms of, like, again, emotional investment in characters that are, again, these characters, I'm not emotionally invested in Captain America. I'm emotionally invested in Chris Evans' Captain America. When, you know, and that kind of commitment to what they're doing and in that moment. And again, it is so simple to have, given what those given circumstances are. I'm fighting a demigod, you know, and I'm in a post-apocalyptic world and everything is destroyed. And now I have my broken armor and my shield, and I'm going to go die. No, it's one of those things like, okay, this could be really hokey, but it's an honest moment. And that honesty made that moment earned, and the payoff so great.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And I promise we'll go back because we're running out of time to the theater. But I do got one thing, because when you mentioned about being invested in the character, and this is going back to another Joker. Have you seen Joaquin Phoenix?
Yeah,
Joker?
I did.
Do you think, because I remember when the movie came out, I remember watching it, and I remember a lot of people talking about it, but they felt attached to the Joker. Mm-hmm. And they felt sorry, and that, hey, this. But he's supposed to be a bad guy.
Yeah.
But in that movie, what do you think about it?
So, I thought, I have very mixed feelings about that. I thought Joaquin Phoenix did an amazing job with that character. Let me rephrase that. I think he did an amazing job with the character that he was given. I thought that the story was a bit. It's a story that I think has been done too many times. You know, someone who is misunderstood, you know, who's struggling, and then finally says, I mean, it is Taxi Driver. It's that movie. And there's been a number of movies where you have the character who has tried so hard to kind of deal with life, but society, the world keeps pushing him down, and then finally he snaps. Mm-hmm. And I thought that, so like, in terms of the story, I really wasn't engaged in the story. I was engaged in what Joaquin Phoenix was doing with Joker. I also didn't think that, and so I may not be I don't want to say I'm the wrong person to ask this question to, but I may be a part of the audience that is a little too niche, you know, because of my love of comic books. If we said the movie, we're going to do a movie called Fred, and we do everything the same way, and he also wears clown makeup, there would be no change. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't really a Joker movie.
Yep.
Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But so that's why I'm like, you know, but for me, I was like, I was underwhelmed when I saw it, but I did love his performance. And he did create a very sympathetic character. And yes, he is the bad guy. I mean, I think if anyone in the audience said "yay" when he spoiler alert for the Joker, when he kills Robert De Niro, I'm like, I think there's something wrong with you if you're saying yay to that moment. And that, you know, that you could feel his frustrations with the world.
I could go on with that, but because now we are running out of time, and I want to get back to it before we end it. So, what's planned for USD Theater? What's going to go on? What do you guys?
So we have a really big season this year. We actually every year for us is a big season because we do 6 to 7 shows a year between our Knudsen Theater and our Arena Theater. So in our Knudsen Theater, we are doing in the fall we're doing The Wolves and The Lightning Thief, based on the Percy Jackson books. And then in the spring, we are doing Company by Sondheim, 39 Steps, and also our spring dance showcase. And the dance showcase is something that we do every other year. And then in the Arena, our smaller theater, our black box theater, we are doing Every Brilliant Thing and in the fall. And then in the spring, we're doing our Ron Moyer one-act festival.
And where can people find all this stuff?
So you can find that by going to www.usd.edu/theater, spelled with an R-E, not an E-R at the end. And then you can scroll down to upcoming shows, and you can find that there. Also, if you look for us if you look up USD Theater on Facebook and on Instagram, you can find us there with all that information as well. Just make sure that if you do find USD Theater, that it is the University of South Dakota Theater, not the University of San Diego. So that sometimes gets confused.
It does happen when I type in USD, I'll get San Diego there sometimes. And then you say
and I'm from San Diego, which is really weird because, and I did this. I've gotten a little bit bigger since I started here back in 2010. But my undergraduate, I got at San Diego State University, so the other SDSU. And those SDSU colors are red and black, not blue and gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I got my PhD at the University of California, San Diego. So my UCSD colors are blue and gold. So I would wear my San Diego school gear, and people are like, "What are you wearing? I don't understand what's going on." Especially my SDSU alumni, alumni hoodie. There were a number of people that were just really confused by that.
Any last words or anything you want to give out?
I would strongly encourage everyone to, if you are in Vermillion, check out USD Department of Theater and check out our season. If you're not in Vermillion, I would encourage you to go see some local theater. It is a unique experience, and in an age where we are kind of more and more engaged with some sort of media or medium, so whether it's our phones or TVs or films or what have you, going to the theater and having a more kind of direct human engagement and storytelling you should experience that, and also support your local theaters, because again, when you go to the theater outside of Broadway, when you go to the theater, that's all local. So support your community.
All right, sweet. All right, thanks for being on the show.
All right, thank you.